This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
China's Three Gorges Dam under pressure as it faces its biggest surge from the Yangtze River amid monsoon floods. The WHO raises concerns about fast-spreading Ebola in northwestern DRC. And the latest in Africa's battles against COVID-19 as cases pass the 680,000 mark on the continent. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. I'm Richard Nta, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. Let's take a look at other stories making headlines this hour. The story of a South African petrol station attendant turned trainee doctor inspires many on social media. And South Africa hopes the World Rugby champion Springboks can play again this year. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. Thanks for tuning in. We begin with the latest in the China floods. The biggest surge of this year is moving down the Yangtze River, threatening tens of millions of people. It reached the Three Gorges Reservoir today in a major test of the dam's capacity to control floods. 127 rivers across China have surpassed flood warning levels, with 3 rivers exceeding their record peak. And 24 provinces and municipalities have experienced flooding. Emergency response levels have been increased in affected regions. 23 people have died or are reported missing this month, and over 20 million people have been affected by floods. Well, Jiangxi province is home to China's largest freshwater lake, and it's among the worst affected areas by monsoon floods. Our reporter Zhou Jiaxin is there with more.
Thunderstorms are quite expected actually this weekend in the region, and the water levels remain high despite some slight declines over this week. Experts say that the water level along the Yangtze River will rise again in the coming days, and the areas downstream in the Poyang Lake region will face another round of tests, and the reservoir's capacity to hold waters is limited, and some old levees that have been saturated for such a long period may be unstable. We are on the highest emergency level here, and that means more personnel, dike reinforcement, and constant inspection already. Meanwhile, we are also seeing more evacuees returning home, and financial support tops the list of disaster relief issues. As of Friday, nearly 7 million people have been affected by the floods in Jiangxi since July 6th, and more than 600,000 hectares of crops were damaged, and resulting in losses of about $2.4 million. We know that the hardest hit groups are many villagers and farmers. With 2020 as China's target year for poverty eradication, I think local governments are facing a real challenge here.
Enshi City in central China's Hubei province was hit by heavy rains on Friday. Large areas of the city have been flooded, and nearly 2,000 people have been evacuated. Rescue operations are still underway. CGTN's Chen Xiaoshu has more.
Streets of Enshi City are submerged in water after an overnight heavy rain. Floodwaters are 2 to 3 meters deep in downtown areas. Homes at low-lying areas are inundated, with some residents trapped. Rescue teams are using rubber boats to save them. In another residential community, around 80 residents are trapped. Rescuers have to conduct a house-to-house search. Floods in the city's commercial streets have receded, and most business owners have come back to save their goods.
The most urgent thing is to help downtown merchants save their inventory. Then we will disinfect the flood-hit areas, since we're still finding the coronavirus.
Local authorities in Enshi City have raised the emergency response to the highest level. But risks still remain, as more torrential rain is expected in the coming days. Chen Xiaoshu, CGTN.
Heavy rains are causing floods and landslides in many parts of Asia. In Indonesia, 36 people have been killed and more than 14,000 villagers have been displaced in the South Sulawesi province. Search and rescue operations are underway for 67 people who are missing. And in northeastern India, at least 71 people have died in monsoon floods. More than 1 million were forced out of their homes into makeshift shelters. The evacuation also heightened the risk of coronavirus infections, and heavy rainfall has also caused extensive damage to properties in the Russian port city of Rostov-on-Don. The water has now receded. Officials say more than 1,500 people were deployed to assist in the cleanup operation. The World Health Organization has expressed concern about the spread of the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo's northwestern province of Equateur. Authorities have recorded more cases now than during the province's previous outbreak in 2018. CGTN's Chris Ochemringa has more from Kinshasa.
Congolese health officials are on their way to deliver medical supplies for treating Ebola on the outskirts of Mbandaka city. The outbreak in Equateur province has occurred in a remote area with a poor road network. That has made it difficult for health workers to access patients. The World Health Organization fears the increasing number of cases may cause the disease to spread to neighboring provinces.
And this is of great concern, particularly as it is now surpassing the previous outbreak in this area, which was closed off and controlled at a total of 54 cases. Some cases are located in remote areas surrounded by rainforests, demanding additional capacities and resources for the response.
According to health officials, more than 12,000 people have been vaccinated over the past 6 weeks. But Ebola cases continue to increase. The WHO is calling on donors to fund its activities in order to strengthen the response effort.
So far, WHO has mobilized 1.7 million from its own fund, and if we need to scale up due to the fast spread of the outbreak, we need more funding.
The DRC is facing many other epidemics like measles, cholera, and the coronavirus, which have affected the response to the Ebola outbreak. The Ebola outbreak in Equateur province is the 11th to occur in the DRC. It has spread to 6 health zones in less than 2 months since the outbreak was declared. The World Health Organization and the Congolese government are working together to try and contain the outbreak, but they are facing financial and logistic challenges. Chris Ochemringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
And now to the COVID-19 pandemic in Africa, where infections have been increasing daily since the first reported case in February 2020. Data from the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shows that Africa has more than 680,000 cases of the coronavirus. The continent has recorded over 14,000 deaths and more than 360,000 recoveries. The South African government has started digging thousands of graves for an anticipated increase in COVID-19 related deaths. South Africa accounts for about half of the infections in Africa. There is increasing pressure on government to strengthen public health facilities as many countries ease their lockdowns. The Chinese mainland recorded 22 new infections on Friday. 6 of them were people returning from overseas. The rest were in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. Our reporter Xu Mengqi has the latest from the regional capital, Urumqi.
Now look behind me. The streets are once again empty. Public transport in the city is once again suspended, and flights in and out of Urumqi have been largely cancelled since yesterday. Now, according to local authorities, so far all the confirmed cases are mild ones, and the majority of these infections have links to one particular gathering in Urumqi's Tianshan district. But because these are domestic transmissions, how it all started remains a big question. You know, the last time the city saw COVID-19 infections was as far back as February. So it's really been a big surprise to everyone. But that said, the response has also been quite quick. Residents are once again discouraged from leaving their compounds. Communities, as you were saying, are organizing large-scale testings. Officials say they are now working to ensure a stable supply of daily necessities, while volunteers are again, delivering those supplies to people with special needs, such as the disabled and the elderly in communities. Dozens of medics from Jiangsu, Hubei, and Sichuan provinces have arrived to help with the testing and screening. And interestingly, on social media, citizens from other parts of this country have also voiced their support for the people here.
Well, Britain says it will temporarily stop providing a daily update of its COVID-19 death toll. The government has ordered a review into data collection methods over its concerns its coronavirus death toll might be exaggerated. British health authorities say reported deaths may have included people who had tested positive for COVID-19 but died months later from unrelated causes. Britain has been Europe's worst hit country with an official death toll of more than 45,000. EU leaders are now in their second day of discussions on an economic rescue plan. The president of the European Council has made new proposals to push for a deal. Lucy Howell has more from Brussels.
This is a recovery fund worth just over $850 billion. And what we're seeing in this compromise proposal that's been presented to EU leaders today is a slightly smaller amount of money that will be offered as non-repayable grants. And that's a concession to a group of countries known as the Frugal Four, who are concerned about the ratio of the fund that will be given away as grants and the ratio that will be loans. And they're calling for a higher percentage to be loans. We're also seeing, as a concession to those countries, a slightly smaller long-term EU budget called the MFF. We're also seeing increased rebates, which is essentially the discount that EU countries get on the contribution that they pay in to their budget. So this is seen as a major set of concessions to those frugal countries who are opposed to the previous EU Commission plan. Well, the key opposition in the last 24 hours has been the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte, who is facing an election year next year, and he has really put his foot down on the issue of governance. He says that if indeed the amount of money is given away as grants as part of this recovery fund, then the way that that money is spent needs to be closely monitored. But what we are seeing is a major concession on that issue, and certainly the mood from Dutch diplomats is that this is a step in the right direction. So we are seeing these smaller splinter groups meeting this afternoon with hope that perhaps enough has been done to win over the Dutch Prime Minister.
And you are watching Africa Live on CGTN. We'll see you on the other side of the break with more news stories.
Culture, the thread that holds Africa together. Every corner of the continent has its own story, from the colorful threads in Morocco to the fairy dances of Botswana. But with great strides in technology, this very culture is struggling to stay pure. CGTN Africa brings you a brand new series, a deep dive into some of Africa's most unique communities and their race to survive in the 21st century. Join us as we take an intimate look at Africa's tribes in a flux.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for a new social contract and a new global deal to address inequality across the world. During his address at the Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture, Guterres said that the COVID-19 pandemic is a human tragedy, but he also said it has created an opportunity to build back a more equitable and sustainable world. South Africa's former president and liberation leader, Nelson Mandela, would have been 102 this year. Now, on his birthday every year, South Africans give their time to doing good to honor the late statesman's 67-year fight against racism and oppression. This year, chefs from all over the country used their cooking skills to feed tens of thousands of vulnerable people in poverty-stricken communities. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
Former South African President Nelson Mandela brought hope to a nation during the dark days of apartheid. To honor his legacy, chefs from 10 cities in South Africa got busy in their kitchens. 67,000 liters of soup freshly made to feed close to 300,000 people who are barely surviving South Africa's long and tough lockdown.
We as the school, we have to also take action and inspire change. And I think Nelson Mandela would have loved that his initiative continued throughout the entire generation. We as the school, we've been cooking since the lockdown started. We've been playing a role in changing the society and in changing the community.
So this soup is a mix of everything, but it's a hearty soup. We have the Rise Initiative, which gives us like a pack of rice, lentils, soup, soy meats, which makes it even a fuller and a healthier, which gets like your nutritional values in. So I'm happy that someone's getting a nutritional meal for like what it's worth, so someone's fed.
The brains behind the campaign Chefs with Compassion and SA Harvest are hoping this initiative can help some South Africans not go to bed hungry.
Chefs with Compassion's mission is to feed the nation, and we've been doing it already for the last 12 weeks. And in partnership with SA Harvest, who are our food rescue champions, to get us the produce, this project is going to go on long beyond just Mandela Day.
In a true demonstration of Ubuntu on how we should be treating others, piping hot liters of soup were delivered to Jackson Park Informal Settlement.
Why I chose this community, it's such a small community, but it's too hard for them to get to the shops. Most kids are very needy, and everyone here, as you can see, how many people. I don't even have words to say about these people, you see. The only thing I can say is that the moment I touched my feet here, it really touched my heart.
I'm telling you, they have been well taken care of. Dwemer South has been here consistently doing feeding of kids, doing feeding of adults. So it's just been since the beginning of lockdown. We've been here with SA Harvest. Jackson Park has been looked after.
South Africa's lockdown has dragged on for close to 4 months, despite the gloominess faced by many who've lost jobs and seen their incomes dry up. The spirit of Ubuntu and Nelson Mandela remains strong. At less than the cost of a cappuccino, South Africans have opened their hearts and given generously to this initiative and to make a difference to those who don't know when their next meal will come from. Julie Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Quite often, stories coming out of Africa about the youth paint a picture of hopelessness brought about by high unemployment and crime, among other issues. However, there are tales of remarkable success amidst challenges. In South Africa, the story of a petrol station attendant turned trainee doctor has inspired many on social media. CGTN's Yulisa Njamela has the rest of that story. Let's take a look.
Ntando Makhubela is a young man from Mpumalanga province here in South Africa. After finishing his high school education with distinctions, Makhubela was excited about pursuing his dreams of becoming a doctor. But his enthusiasm was short-lived. Despite his excellent exam results, he was unable to join a university because of financial constraints. The young man then decided to look for a job as he knew he could not continue depending on his parents. He found a job at a garage where he worked as a petrol pump attendant. Makhubela had no idea that his job would open doors for him to pursue his dream.
Yeah, after my matric, after receiving my results, well, I was excited. Hey, my family was happy. So now the problem was getting into med school because I've always wanted to get into med school. And then we had a function at our school to celebrate those students who did well. And yeah, I was recognized by many there. So after that, I couldn't get into vets. And then when I came back home, one of the people who were there, an ANC Youth League member, saw me at my work.
ANC party's youth structure. Once Mkhabela explained his problem, the Youth League member assisted him to attain a scholarship via the South Africa Cuba Medical Program. That's when his journey to being a medical doctor began. Once in Cuba, during his first year, the determined student had to learn Spanish.
Like here in Cuba, you can only converse in Spanish. Everyone speaks Spanish here, so if you don't know Spanish, then you're doomed. You cannot communicate with the people. Even at the hospital, you have to communicate with the patients in Spanish, and you have to get all the information in Spanish.
After he completes his 5th year in July 2021, Makhubela will be returning home to complete his final year at a university where he will graduate. The young man says when he completes his studies, he will return home and contribute to his community in Mpumalanga province and perhaps also continue to inspire others.
My plan is go back to my community and promote primary health care amongst the people. That's what the Cuban system, healthcare system teaches a lot.
The South Africa Cuba Medical Program was introduced in 1998. It has since assisted a large number of young South Africans. Yulison Jambela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
The news continues on Africa Live. We've got your sports news coming up next. Don't go away. Here's a peek at the headline.